James stood in the kitchen, watching Rachel move with calculated distance. 7 years of marriage had taught him to read her silences, but this one felt different, heavier, final. She'd been distant for weeks, buried in her phone, canceling plans with excuses that didn't quite land. That morning, she'd said something he never thought he'd hear. "I need a break, James. Real space. I'm going to stay at my sister's for a while." The words had hit him like a physical blow. He'd fumbled for explanations, but Rachel had already packed a bag. Her eyes were red-rimmed but determined, as if she'd made this decision long ago and was only now setting it free. "How long?" he'd managed to ask. "I don't know yet," she'd replied, and that uncertainty destroyed him more than any timeline could. Now, 3 days into her absence, James moved through their house like a ghost. The bed felt impossibly large. He'd wake at 3 a.m. expecting to find her there, her dark hair splayed across the pillow, her hand reaching for him in sleep. That unconscious intimacy, the way she'd curl against him without even waking, was what he missed most. He replayed their last few months obsessively. There had been that conference in Portland where she'd stayed an extra weekend for networking. Then the late nights at the office when she'd suddenly become indispensable to a marketing campaign. He'd been supportive, proud even. Rachel had always been ambitious, driven. It was one of the things he loved about her. But had he missed something? Some sign that the ambition was masking something else? His best friend Marcus called on day 5. "Come out tonight," Marcus insisted. "Sitting alone isn't helping anyone." James almost declined, but the empty house felt suffocating. He met Marcus at their usual bar, a dimly lit place near downtown where they'd been regulars for years. Marcus ordered him a bourbon. Neat, the way James drank it when things were heavy. "Talk to me," Marcus said. "She won't even tell me what's wrong," James said, the frustration finally breaking through. "Rachel just shut down. No explanation, no fight, nothing. She just left." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, studying his beer. "You don't think—" "What?" "Nothing, man. Never mind." But the question hung between them, the suggestion James had been trying not to voice. Was there someone else? Had Rachel's networking been something more intimate? The thought twisted his stomach. He went home that night and found himself in Rachel's office, something he rarely did. Her laptop sat on the desk, closed and dark. He shouldn't look. He knew he shouldn't, but desperation drove him to open her email on the shared computer they used for bills. What he found made his blood run cold. A thread of deleted messages with someone named David. The subject line read, "We can't keep doing this. It's not fair to him." James felt the world tilt. His marriage, the thing he'd built his life around, suddenly felt like it had been constructed on sand. He sank into Rachel's chair and let himself break. 2 weeks into the separation, James had stopped pretending to eat. He'd moved on from anger to a hollow numbness that felt almost worse. Marcus kept calling, suggesting he come out, but James couldn't face anyone. The humiliation was too raw. He'd become that guy, the one whose wife left him, whose wife cheated on him, whose marriage had imploded. He still hadn't confronted Rachel about David. Part of him was afraid that speaking it aloud would make it real, would transform this temporary break into a permanent ending. Rachel had been eerily polite in their limited communications. Texts about the utilities and her mail being forwarded. Nothing personal. Nothing that suggested she was as devastated as he was. If anything, her composure made it worse. It meant she'd already processed this, already accepted it. She'd probably been accepting it for months while he was planning weekend getaways and renewing her wedding ring insurance. On day 15, he received a call from his mother. "James, honey, I ran into Denise at the grocery store. She mentioned Rachel was staying with them?" The lie was automatic. "Just a little break. We both need space." "Oh, sweetheart. Marriage is hard. Do you want to talk about it?" He couldn't. couldn't admit to his mother that he'd failed at the one thing he was supposed to be good at. He was a husband. His career was fine, his friendship solid, but his marriage was crumbling into pieces he couldn't reassemble. That night, he did something he'd been avoiding. He drove past his in-laws' house where Rachel was staying. Her car was in the driveway, the same silver sedan he'd helped her choose 3 years ago. The house was lit up, warm and inviting. Through the front window, he could see shadows moving, Rachel's sister, probably. Her family encircling her, protecting her from him. He sat in his car in the cold, watching. A man he didn't recognize pulled into the driveway. His heart stopped. The man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, carrying flowers. James watched as the front door opened and Rachel appeared, and even from a distance, even in the dark, James could see her smile. She smiled like that for him once. She smiled like that in the early days when they'd stolen afternoons in hotels, when every kiss felt like a rebellion against their separate lives. He'd been so proud that she chose him, that someone so brilliant and beautiful had wanted him. Now she was smiling at someone else. The man, David, it had to be David, pulled her into a hug, and James forced himself to look away. He drove home in a daze, numbly taking turns without really registering them. It was real. Whatever Rachel had been hiding, whoever David was, it was real enough for public displays, real enough for flowers. He sat on his bedroom floor at 2 a.m. and allowed himself to fall completely apart.
3 weeks into the separation, on a Thursday evening, James had come to dread because it meant another night of nothing. There was a knock on the door. Rachel stood on the porch in the rain without an umbrella, soaked through, her makeup running. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. James's first instinct was to pull her inside, to protect her from the storm despite everything. But he stopped himself. "I'm sorry for just showing up," she said, her voice raw. "My sister wouldn't give me a ride. I called an Uber. I needed to come home." "It's still your home," he said carefully, stepping aside. She came in, dripping water on the hardwood floors they'd spent a Saturday installing together. He got her a towel, and she wrapped it around her shoulders like a child. "I have to tell you something. And you're probably going to hate me." James braced himself for it. The confession about David, the admission of infidelity, the reasons it was his fault. He worked too much, paid too little attention, took her for granted. He was ready for all of it, had rehearsed how he'd respond, which was to say nothing at all. What he wasn't ready for was the truth. "I wasn't cheating," Rachel said, and James's breath caught. "Not physically, anyway. Emotionally, maybe. I don't know. That's what I've been trying to figure out." "Rachel, let me finish, please." She sank onto the couch, the towel slipping from her shoulders. "David is my therapist. Was my therapist. I was seeing him because I was falling apart and I didn't know how to tell you." James's mind reeled. "Your therapist?" "I started going to him 8 months ago. I was having panic attacks. At work, at home, in the car. I couldn't figure out why, so I thought maybe someone objective could help me." She looked up at him, her eyes devastated. "It was you, James. You were making me anxious." The words landed like a punch. "We had gotten so comfortable that we stopped communicating. We stopped knowing each other. You'd come home from work and immediately check your phone. I'd ask you about your day and get 5-word answers. We hadn't had sex in 4 months before my last panic attack about it. I felt like I was disappearing, like I was becoming invisible in my own marriage." James tried to interrupt, but she held up her hand. "I wasn't cheating on David, but I was becoming dependent on him. I was telling him things I should have been telling you. I was looking forward to my appointments with him the way I used to look forward to coming home to you. When I realized what was happening, I knew I had to choose. I could either lose David and fix my marriage, or I could lose my marriage." "So you left," James said quietly. "I needed to know if you'd fight for me. If you'd even notice I was gone." Tears streamed down her face. "And you did nothing. For 3 weeks you did nothing." "I did everything," James said, his voice breaking. "I replayed every moment. I convinced myself you were seeing David because I was too proud to believe it might be something I caused." Rachel stood up suddenly. "I saw you that night. Outside my sister's house. I saw you watching. And I didn't know what to do. David had been helping me understand that I needed to want my marriage more than I needed to escape it." The flowers that night. He wasn't courting me, James. He was saying goodbye. He was ending the therapeutic relationship because I had to let go. I saw you smile at him because he was freeing me to either fight for you or let you go. They stood facing each other in their living room, the same room where they'd opened champagne for promotions and held each other through losses, the same room that had become a stranger's house filled with polite distance. "I'm terrified," Rachel admitted. "Terrified that I'm making a mistake, that you don't actually want to fix this, that we've broken something too fundamental." "I want to," James said. "I want to fight for this. I didn't know I was losing you." "Then we have to actually talk, James. Every day, about everything. Not the surface stuff, the deep stuff, the fears and dreams and frustrations. We have to actually choose each other, not just default to being married." That night, they didn't sleep together. Instead, they sat on that couch until dawn, really talking for the first time in years. Rachel told him about the panic attacks, about her childhood fears of abandonment manifesting as she felt him retreating. James talked about his own insecurities, the pressure he felt to be the strong one, how he'd stopped trying because he was terrified of not being enough. By the time the sun rose, they were both exhausted and raw and more honest than they had been in their entire marriage.
The first 2 weeks after Rachel came home were fragile. They were learning to rebuild trust, not in the traditional sense of infidelity, but in the more fundamental way of actually knowing each other. James had started therapy too, with a different therapist Rachel found, and they'd booked couples counseling for Wednesday evenings. It wasn't romantic, it was hard. But one evening, 3 weeks into this new beginning, something shifted. Rachel had made dinner, James's favorite, the pasta dish she used to cook when they first started dating. She'd set the table with actual candles, something they hadn't done in years. James arrived home to the smell of garlic and basil and something like hope. "I wanted to tell you something," Rachel said as they ate. "I've been thinking about it all day." "Good or bad?" James asked carefully. They were still navigating these landmines together. "I think it's good. At least I hope you will." She reached across the table and took his hand. "The therapist helped me realize something. When I was feeling disconnected from you, it wasn't because you didn't love me. It was because I didn't feel seen. I felt like I was performing Rachel, the perfect wife, rather than being Rachel, the person." "You were never perfect," James said gently. "I don't know if I ever told you that." "I know, but I was trying to be. And the more I tried, the more you withdrew because you couldn't see the real me underneath all the performance." After dinner, they moved to the bedroom for the first time since she'd returned. It was tentative at first, careful, but then Rachel kissed him like she meant it, and James felt something unlock inside him. This wasn't the passionate quickie of their early relationship. This was slower, more deliberate. This was looking into each other's eyes and choosing to be vulnerable. Afterward, as Rachel's head rested on his chest, James felt her heartbeat synchronizing with his own. "I was so afraid you'd given up on me," she whispered. "I was so afraid you'd given up on us." "I almost did," Rachel admitted. "There were moments when I thought it would be easier to just let this end, to start fresh with someone who didn't have all this history of disappointment." "Why didn't you?" "Because history isn't just disappointment," she said. "It's also every good moment we've had. It's you bringing me soup when I had the flu and staying up all night holding my hair back.
It's you laughing at my stupid jokes and believing in my career even when I didn't. It's all the Tuesday mornings we spent in bed talking about nothing important. History is love, too, James. We just forgot how to access it."
6 months later, Rachel and James stood in their bedroom, and he tied the silk robe she wore for him, a recent purchase, something designed for this intimate moment. They'd scheduled it, a Saturday morning with no phone calls, no emergencies, no obligations. Just them and the deliberate practice of staying present together. It had become ritual. Sunday morning coffee while they talked about their dreams, Wednesday therapy sessions where they learned new language for old hurts, Saturday mornings like this where they reconnected physically and emotionally. Their marriage wasn't fixed. James now understood that marriage wasn't something that got fixed and stayed that way, like a car repair. It was something that required constant, deliberate attention. But that constant attention had become something he actually wanted to give. Rachel had made a career change, taking a job with less stress and more flexibility. James had negotiated work-from-home days. They'd built boundaries around their phones, designated tech-free hours, scheduled date nights like they were important meetings, because they were. They'd learned that their marriage wasn't just something that happened to them, it was something they had to actively choose. "I love you," Rachel said that Saturday morning as they lay tangled together. "I know. And I love you. Not because of our history, not because of obligation, but because I actually know you now." Scary, isn't it? Knowing each other completely? Terrifying, James agreed, but better than the alternative. That evening, James's mom called to ask how things were going. "They're good," James said honestly. "They're really good." "I'm glad, sweetheart. I always knew you two would work it out." James didn't tell her about the therapy, the near ending, the moment he'd sat in the rain outside his in-laws' house, convinced his marriage was over. Some stories needed privacy to fully develop. But as he hung up the phone and watched Rachel curled up on the couch reading, he realized something fundamental. Their marriage hadn't been destroyed and rebuilt. It had been peeled down to its foundation and reconstructed more honestly. They'd learned that love wasn't a destination, but a practice. Not something you achieved, but something you chose every single day. Rachel looked up and caught him watching her. "What?" she smiled. "Just realizing how lucky I am," he said. She set down her book and opened her arms. He came to her on the couch, and they held each other as the evening deepened into night. Two people learning that sometimes the thing that almost breaks you can teach you how to love better. The break hadn't ended their marriage. It had saved it.